All right, welcome everyone. We're here for our the first Athletics Canada coaching webinar of 2025, unlocking potential from discovery to the Olympic stage, Paralympic stage. Key thing there. Yeah, so we have with us today Jodi, Langley, and Katie Pegg, the dream team from Halifax. Um, So we're going to chat to them about their Paralympic journey. I'm John from Athletics Canada, and in the background, Kyle Smith, also from AC, is there. So um, basically, when if you have any questions, you should put them in the chat or in the Q&A, I should say, in the Q&A, and Kyle will let us know, and we'll answer your questions. Pretty much any time. I think if it works, we'll just answer it. Or we'll wait to the end. Depends how things go. We're gonna have a conversation, see how it goes. Everybody is muted. So your questions will go through the Q&A. Vous pouvez aussi demander vos questions en français et je vais traduire. The webinar is being recorded and will be posted in the coming days on the AC YouTube channel. Coaches who have entered their NCCP number and are NCCP certified will get 1 PD point for their participation in the webinar tonight. All right, so we have Jodi. We talked about this. I'm going to let Jodi and Katie introduce themselves because they know themselves best, and they'll probably know more things than I know. They have quite the impressive resumes though. So Jodi, do you want to start and tell us a bit about yourself there?
Perfect. Awesome. Happy to be here. My name's Jodi, and I currently reside in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and coach with St. Mary's University as well as Athletics East, which is our club here. Started my coaching career about 10 years ago now when I stopped with training myself. And I am performance coach trained and in throwing and club coach trained in wheelchair racing. And that was just kind of like a recent progression over the last couple of years, and everything. So yeah, that's me right now.
Mhm.
Katie, next.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm a third year student at St. Mary's University. I'm originally from Toronto, Ontario, but I go to school in Halifax, and I started throwing last year of September 2024, and I'm a first-time Paralympian in the women's F46 shot put. So yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Katie, what do you study at St. Mary's?
I'm studying biology and I'm doing a certificate in forensic sciences here.
Hmm,
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. Cool. All right. So since the theme is the kind of the journey here, Jodi, maybe start by just telling us a bit about your coaching journey. When you mentioned you started coaching, when you stopped competing. So how did you get, sort of to the point where you're at today?
Yeah, so I like coached a little bit as I was an athlete, like you go and you coach the high school kids when my coach was a high school teacher, so that kind of that natural I helped him out in the summer or spring seasons. And I really liked that. So then once I decided to hang up my shoes and my discus, I guess you could say, I decided I went out to UBCO to do my master's and worked with the club there. I was a throws coach for the club there. It kind of worked out well because their throws coach was just leaving at that point to start her own business and start a family and everything. So then I came in first coaching gig with a really pretty big club with OAC there and throws coach there. We didn't have very many athletes for throwing, but it was really good to learn from like Pat and everything there. So that kind of got me introduced to it all. And then after that, I finished my master's. So I was there for 2 years, then went out to St. FX for a job, and then coached there for 2 years. When I went there, the throws coach also had left right before I came, so got into throws coach, but then also the speed power coaches had left. So then I also coached sprints and jumps, because it's like all the same once you narrow it down, right?
Yeah.
Especially that high jump, coaching high jump at U Sports because one of the athletes made a U Sports was quite an interesting experience, but it was all good and everything. I'm a coach, so it's all kind of the same to a certain degree. And then after St. FX, came here and coached for Dal for a little bit, and then SMU, and then with the club and everything, and then here we are, and just yeah. So this, I'd say about when, well, I guess when Yuli kind of retired from coaching is when so that was 2021. I kind of helped take over a little bit of the para stuff. So then it kind of naturally led to this, trying to really work on coach development with para. That is not just, you're not a para coach, I'm a coach. I coach throwers. If you want to throw heavy crap, come see me. That's my motto. Kind of like that. So it doesn't matter, recreation, competitive, like anything there. So yeah, so that's kind of my coaching journey right now.
Yeah, I have a friend who says I don't coach events, I coach people.
Yeah.
So
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So okay, so Katie, tell us about your athlete journey up until when you met Jodi. How did you get into sports?
Yeah, so growing up, my parents always had me in sports, whether it was like through T-ball soccer or T-ball. Those never really stuck with me. I was a big dancer growing up. And then in school, we had our school teams. So in grade 3, I first got exposed to track and field. And that's really when I was exposed to shot put and when I fell in love with it. It was always in the school season that I got to throw because I was never with a club. And then throughout my journey in grade 6, I started playing tackle football on an all-male team called Scarborough Thunder. Um, I played with them all the way up until grade 12 when I had to decide where I wanted to go for university. And with that, I was in contact with one of the coaches here at SMU to potentially come out, give a try out for the men's team here, and just see where things go. But at
For
the
football.
end, yeah, for football. So part of my conversation with this coach was that I should be coming to SMU for the school and not for the sport, just in case like it didn't work out. And through that journey and process, he ended up stepping down from the position, and we got a new head coach. And that quickly, my university football door quickly closed. And instead, I worked with the team. I did film for them. I played for a women's team in the summer as well, so I was sticking with football, just trying to do everything I could do to potentially still get that opportunity to play at the university level, potentially for the male team. And then September of last year, I finished up some work for the team, and Jodi and the SMU track or the SMU throws team had been in the weight room. And that was when I first approached Jodi to see if I could throw for the team. And the rest is, yeah, it's history from there. So, yeah.
So you were throwing in high school as well.
Yeah.
What high school did you go to in Scarborough?
I went to Sir Oliver Mowat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, cool. But had you thought about going to doing track in university like from high school, or you were focused on football?
Initially in grade 9, when I got the opportunity to go to OFSA, I wanted to throw in university. But it definitely wasn't on my radar just because I was playing football. So coming out of COVID within my first year, I really wanted to get back into throwing, just because that's something I've always enjoyed doing. And I missed 3 years of that from not, or yeah, that would have been 3 years from COVID. So yeah.
Yeah. And when you were throwing, at least I mean, probably not in high school but in university, did you have your eye on the Paralympics? Had you ever thought about that as an option for you or as a pathway?
When I first approached Jodi, it definitely was not on my radar, or it didn't really cross my mind as being a possibility for me until a few weeks in when Jodi and I had a meeting and that was brought up about potentially competing as a para athlete. That conversation was very much an interesting one because I didn't think my disability was severe enough or at the right level, for lack of better
Mhm.
terminology, that would be able or be classifiable for me.
Mhm.
So once that conversation had been brought up and we went through all the necessary procedures with Athletic Canada, like I guess anything before it never had been until that day.
What made you, did Jody say something or anything that sort of convinced you that it was like a good way to go? Like what kind of made you decide to go and sort of get classified and try to become a Paralympian?
Um, I guess when Jody had just mentioned the idea of being or competing as a para athlete, it had opened another door, an avenue that I never knew was possible.
Mm.
And with football, I kind of closed a lot of these opportunities that I potentially could have had. So
Mm.
it was like a door open. So let me take advantage of that and
Mm.
just see how far it could go. Because I think at that point, Jody was saying that I would be
Mm.
pretty competitive in that environment or as a para athlete as well.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's easy to see because if once you sort of figure out your classification, you've already been throwing, so you know what
Hmm.
the marks are, so you have a sense. So Jody, how did that go from your perspective? Like when Katie approached you to start throwing, did you kind of immediately think para, or as you say, you're just like, you want to throw? Let's go, let's throw. And then how did you kind of get into the idea of that Jody or that Katie could be a Paralympian?
Yeah. Well, so when Katie approached me in the weight room and I was like, sure, yeah, come out. We throw tomorrow at 4. I don't remember. And that, so
Hmm.
she came out and she threw well. Like she definitely threw well enough to make on the SMU team. So that was like a
Hmm.
non-starter there.
Hmm.
And then I was thinking about it. It took me probably about like 2 weeks till we had like our first meeting. I was texting my
Hmm.
sister a lot about it, being like, I think she can throw, like she would be able to be very competitive at like the para level. And I was like, just didn't know how to approach it at that point because I kind of just
Hmm.
started in that kind of para world with Yuli
Hmm.
finishing up there.
Hmm.
And I was like, I guess I gotta tell her.
Hmm.
I wasn't sure like how that conversation would be perceived when it was a very
Hmm.
new relationship. Obviously, we'd only known each other for like 2 weeks at that time.
Hmm.
But then we had our one-on-one meeting, like I do with all my
Hmm.
athletes at the beginning of the year. And then I just approached it. And then we had a discussion about it. I knew because I had looked up before and I'd like looked at, I know all the classes and everything.
Hmm.
I knew like what the Canadian record was. And like I looked up all the 2020 results
Hmm.
and stuff like that. So I knew that she would likely like obtain the Canadian record, for lack of a better term,
Hmm.
break the record, I guess that's what we call it. I don't know,
Hmm.
that sounds so wrong. But yeah, it's true.
Acquire the record.
Yeah, exactly. So then I just kind of approached it that way. Like I think you'd be competitive at this. I also know Katie's a competitive spirit and stuff like that. So it kind of
Hmm.
boded well there. And yeah, it moved very quickly after that. Like once AC got
Hmm.
involved, like the AC High
Hmm.
Performance team got involved, it was very
Hmm.
quick,
Hmm.
to say the least, like in like a positive way, not a lot
Hmm.
of things. It just like adds a lot more people to the mix more than
Hmm.
anything. But yeah, so that's kind of how that comes. I just kind of approached
Hmm.
Katie about it because why not?
Yeah. Yeah. So, Katie, I want to ask you about like you sort of said, oh, I don't think I'm disabled enough or whatever. Like your conception of your disability, how did you kind of like, I guess, sort of square that with this whole world of where like everybody is classified and sort of, and everyone's organized according to their disability? Like what, I guess, yeah, what did you have any, I don't want to say reservations, but just like what were your kind of, questions and concerns going into this?
I don't really know. I think like although I wasn't sure as to whether or not my disability was severe enough to be classifiable, I
Mhm.
think for the most part I was really excited because it gave me an opportunity to reach more people and make a larger impact. And I don't think I had many concerns about the whole process because I was just really excited to be able to do something that would have a really big impact on those around me. Um, but I guess like when I did get classified, there's always that little slight worry that your arm might be a littlest bit too long with
Mm,
measurements that might be like, no, sorry. But
mhm,
I mean, other than that, just like even now seeing what my classification group looks like, um, everyone's upper limb deficiency or upper limb disability is very different from one another.
mhm,
Um, no, maybe there are a few people with similar arms, but for the
mhm,
most part, it's a very large scale of various arm disabilities. So I think seeing that now has really helped me be like, no, like it's not just one size fits all or one look is what they're looking for. So
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Cool. That's good. That's good to, it's good to hear. I think, I think I've talked to, Fanny Smith about this and that, there are probably, so many athletes out there, kind of in your position who could take advantage of this Paralympic opportunity, but aren't really sure. So it's good to hear that like it's not necessarily like one size fits all and it's just like, let's try it basically, right? So Jodi, what you mentioned a little bit about the like getting the high performance team involved. So what changed for you there? You mentioned like having a lot of other people involved. So what was that like kind of, going from your usual sort of coaching group and things like that to then kind of having all this support around and lots of different players in the game.
Yeah, it was different to say the least. Like Katie and I joke about one of our first meetings with one of the people, and they're just like listing off acronyms to us left, right, and center, and we're there, we're like, what is CAPE? What is CAT? Like we got like, what is all this stuff? Game plan, all this stuff. And we're
Yeah.
like, what is going on? So like that was like I remember that meeting clear as day. And I was there and I was like walked up and I like, tried to hide like how I was like, oh shit, I know nothing. Sorry. Sorry. Like, oh, I know nothing. And I was like, this is like way too overwhelming. But then like once you break it down, and like I tried to hide that in front of Katie for lack of a better term. I didn't hide it
Until we
very
were in
well
the
though.
car.
Yeah.
You're like, did you understand?
Yeah. But I think it's like that's the biggest thing is like there's so many more characters involved, and like everyone in the high performance world is like very nice. It was nice that I could like reinvigorate some of my old networks like through the mentorship program with Richard. So I was able to kind of reach out to him again, and kind of go through that process. And he helped a lot with that process there as well. And then obviously like I have other kind of friends across Canada that I could really pick their brains about it as well. But just like the number of people that are involved in the team now, because usually it's just like me and I'm on my little island. And like all the head coaches I've worked with before through SMU or the Athletics East, like Rich, he like he's a great head coach, but he'd give two craps what I do with my athletes like on a day-to-day basis. But now like all these people want to know like what are we doing on a day-to-day basis, kind of thing like that. So that was probably the most intimidating thing. And like I know I do it like right, for lack of a better term, like there's many ways to
Sure.
do it. Um, but just more like more eyes on me in a
Mhm,
different way. And like there's now like there's APA that we have to communicate with. There's
mhm,
like Carlo with the head coach of the team and
mhm,
stuff like that, and managers and also then we also have the CSIA people through Canadian Sports Institute Atlantic and everything.
mhm,
So just like a lot more
mhm,
characters involved, which is great because like I love team collaboration. I love like bouncing ideas off
mhm,
each other, like bringing other coaches in and like send videos to like Sierra off and be like, what are you thinking? Like, what drills do you think
mhm,
would help with this and stuff like that? And
mhm,
just, and I've done that even like precursor to Katie, but now just like I can, I have that network that I'm available that I can reach out to and stuff like that. So, that's really nice. And that's just like more people. But
mhm,
definitely is at the beginning a little bit intimidating, but kind of had to like figure out that low hanging fruit at start because it was like always it was gonna be
mhm,
within a year at that point.
mhm,
Like I'm just getting to know Kate at that point. I feel like even though it's only been like a year and a half now, the amount of
mhm,
hours we spent together now is just like I don't feel like it's been a year and a half. I feel like we've known each other
Yeah.
for years. Kind of things like that's also like very different. The amount of not one-on-one time, don't get me wrong, but
Mhm,
the like amount of time that we spend together is very different.
mhm,
And then with like my other athletes and stuff like that, and like traveling to all these places and doing all these things and stuff like that as well.
mhm. So can you break it down a bit in terms of the different, like you mentioned Carla, you mentioned Richard, like in terms of the different people in their roles and specifically what they were doing to support you guys?
Yeah. So Carla's like the head coach of the Paralympic side of things. So I usually go to her if I have like kind of bigger picture questions, I guess. And like other things kind of there. So she's like not definitely on a day-to-day basis, but she's like access to my Google Drive that has everything
Mhm.
about Katie and stuff like that. So I'm sure if she had questions, she'd go into there. And then we have the APA, so the Athlete Performance Advisor, the
Mhm.
Sarah Black for
Yeah.
Katie, who kind of acts as like the advocate for Katie when like at AC meetings, stuff like that. So
Mhm.
we meet with her every once in a while. I have like a continuous kind of text chain going with her. That like if Katie's injured or anything like that, we go through her. We tell her if we need anything from AC, we go through
Mhm.
her. And kind of that sort of aspect there. And then there's also like so those are kind of like more the AC people, and then also like Fanny
Mhm.
too, to a certain degree
Mhm.
because of my role is also like the development coach. I work with
Mhm.
her quite a bit
Mhm.
too. And then from like a CSIA perspective, there's like the game plan advisor, there's a
Mhm.
mental performance coach, strength and conditioning coach. We haven't
Mhm.
really used much of the biomechanics, but I like talked with the biomechanist in Ontario a little bit,
Mhm.
talked to Christian at AC, talked to Luke at AC for strength and conditioning,
Mhm.
our dietitians. So like
Mhm.
Melissa, so like there's a bunch of people just like to help with everything. A mental performance coach
Mhm.
with Danielle and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So there's just like all these people that like figuring out too how to like integrate them within my like YTP and stuff as well.
Mhm.
Was a big learning curve because usually like it's just me and like I'll do the
Mhm.
meetings, we get hear about goal setting and all this sort of
Yeah.
stuff and kind of do that. Now it's like no, Danielle can kind of do that and like
Mhm.
integrate that within and how like we're talking about performance anxiety, things like that. How can we integrate
Mhm.
that in within a YTP
Mhm.
and stuff like that? So I guess those are kind of the characters there.
Okay. And so like for example, like the mental performance consultant would meet with you and sort of go through their whatever the plan is and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
the mental performance coach meets with Katie like one on
Mhm.
one, and stuff
Okay.
like that. And then, like I don't know the day to day by any means. Like
Mhm.
that's the third
Mhm.
time in their space, but I
Okay.
know the general like themes of
Mhm.
sessions,
Right. Okay.
and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. And how is that for you, Jody? Kind of like having to kind of step back and like not having that like direct, kind of contact with the athlete on certain
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like an adjustment to say at least, but I also think it's really good for athletes and Katie to have safe spaces that aren't me.
Hmm.
Because I think that's
Yeah.
also like the big power dynamics of sport, and stuff
Hmm.
like that as well. As it's good for her to have relationships in
Hmm.
sport with people in power, whatever you want to call it, mental performance
Hmm.
coach, conditioning coach that aren't me. And like it did take an adjustment because I'm so used to like
Hmm.
this is what I've always done, but there's no
Sure.
reason why that has to be the way it always is. Like, obviously,
Hmm.
as we all know, I'm very much of a continuous learner and I love to learn. And I've learned so
Hmm.
much from Danielle over the last little bit, and stuff like that. So it's just like all about getting better each time. And every
Hmm.
conversation I have with her or with Luke or Christian or something like that, I learn something new or some like other tool in the toolkit.
Hmm.
So like I don't find like at the beginning I was just like, this is like a little bit too much. I was also a little bit worried about like I mean, this is like my perception of it, but I was like, this is a lot for Katie as well because it was going so fast. And I have a little bit
Hmm.
of a role of like filtering these people in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if we did like dietitian, strength conditioning, and mental performance at the same time, I think that would be a little overwhelming. So we kind of started with a low
Hmm.
hanging fruit to start. So we started with mental performance and then like waited till after Dubai and then added in strength and conditioning and now like adding in nutrition and stuff like that as well.
Mm. So, Katie, how did you perceive all of this? Like, how did kind of manage all these sort of new faces and ha did you help Jody, through the process as well a little bit? Like, what was your side of this sort of meeting all these people?
Yeah, I guess similar to Jody, it was kind of a lot, especially that first meeting with all the acronyms being thrown at us. Um, but I really appreciated having Jody by my side through it all because it was like we kind of both knew we were in that same boat of there's a lot going on
Mhm.
and we're like really working together to get through everything. And then it was really nice to have Jody kind of be that filter a little bit to then
Mhm.
make sure that priority one is
Mhm.
mental performance and then strength and conditioning. Um, because during that time too, I was also in school. So by the time I kind of found out that I was going to get classified in Dubai, unfortunately for me, my attention went all the way to sport, and
Mhm.
school is now not the first priority.
Yeah.
But needless to say, I got it done and I did really well.
Yeah.
But it was definitely nice to have someone like alongside me, my coach, Jodi,
Mhm.
alongside me, helping me through that because it was a lot and my attention did shift, focus very fast through the whole process.
Right. So Dubai was when? Like what time of year was that?
February, first
February?
2 weeks of February.
So so a year ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I have
Yeah,
another athlete
that's
going next week to the same meet that Katie went to, so almost exactly a year ago.
yeah. Okay.
So
Cool. Are you going again? Is that what you said? Sorry, who's
No.
going? No. Okay.
Carly's going, sorry,
Oh,
the other,
Carly. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
different athlete.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. And Katie, so I mean, coming from a football background, um, it's a big team sport, big team culture. Um, track and field's a bit of an individual sport. Throwing is an individual sport. You go throw
Mhm.
individually, but how do you find elements of team through all this through this sort of not a new sport for you, but like a sport that's now become your primary sport.
I would say definitely at the beginning it was a little difficult trying to find the team aspect or really just really see how it was. Because coming into the throws team, I kind of was shy. So I didn't really talk to my other throwers, my teammates as much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but through that time of being with them so often and throwing and lifting with them,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely started to feel that team bond more. Um, and like, although we're at meets or even during practice, it's still individualized where we're just throwing and then Jodi will coach us. Um, like each meet, we're all cheering for each other.
Mm-hmm.
This year, especially, like we were all cheering for each other in between throws. You would have little commentary to help each other and boost each other up. And although we're throwing by ourselves, we still have our team surrounding us and building us up and really supporting us. So I guess with time, it definitely was easier to find and opening up and being more comfortable talking to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I think it probably helps to start to build that up. The university, track teams are always good teams, so
Mhm.
it's always good. Um, so Katie, you mentioned like, the sort of struggle between school and sport. Once you kind of figured out that, okay, this is real, I might be going to Paris. What changes did you have to make, like, kind of in your mindset that, would allow you to reach that goal?
What changes in my mindset? I think part of it, ooh, difficult one. Um,
John asking the hard-hitting question.
No gotcha questions. This was in the document before.
I think I was lucky enough that Paris was a few months after school ended, so I was able to kind of forget about school for a little bit and just really focus in on what I needed to do with strength and practices. So I guess it was just knowing that, um, like, I know leading up to the games, a big part of my mindset was just trying to hit a certain mark, and just going out and being the best athlete that I could be. It definitely was hard sometimes because if you don't have a good meet, you're kind of worried about how the trajectory or looking at
Mhm.
your rankings and how that's going to change. And I did
Mhm.
kind of get stuck in that of
Mhm.
regularly looking at the updates and rankings
Mhm.
when AC posted it every single
Mhm.
week.
Right.
So leading up to the games, it definitely was like slowly putting that away and not
Mhm.
looking at that. And
Mhm.
even same with social media. So then I wasn't looking at what some of the people in my category in my class were throwing. So then I could just
Mhm.
really hone in on what I needed to do and the
Mm.
best possible way that I could do it.
Mm. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of noise and
Mhm.
it's you have to manage that. I guess what was I gonna ask a follow up to that? Oh, just so there's this meet in Dubai, right? Um, when you're competing, um, just sort of a general question for people to know, like, are you competing at para only meets or are you competing at open track meets and throwing in the like in the open section, or does there have to be like a certain kind of, I don't know, certification of the meet or something for it to count for a para throw?
Yeah, so um right now we're currently in our indoor season. So indoor doesn't count towards my para ranking as it
Mhm.
only para really only looks at your outdoor markings. So
Yeah.
in order for any of the distances I throw to count towards um my para ranking is it has to be WPA certified, so World
Yeah.
Para Athletics certified. Um, but I do believe that it can compete either open or para for that to
Mhm.
still count.
Right.
So when I'm indoor, I'm competing as an open athlete. And then once I got outside, I was, depending on what the meet offered, I would either compete as a para athlete or
Mhm.
as a open athlete. So a lot of the time through the AC national tour, I was
Mhm.
competing as a para athlete.
Right.
Mhm.
Cool. Um, so Jody, maybe this is a question for you. Sort of keeping on this vein of competitions, how did you sort of select the competitions that would be sort of most useful and helpful, like, or just generally for a thrower, like how often you want to throw?
Yeah, so the thing is that because like Katie was so new to it all, I'm like very much like get that experience competing and compete like a lot, kind of like that. So it worked out well because she's from Toronto, but was here and stuff like that. So after Worlds last year, we decided that she would do the Canadian track and field tour or whatever that thing is called, national. I don't know, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Everyone knows what I mean. I'm in
Yeah.
Ontario while she was home and kind of get some time at home because she had spent so much time away and had been traveling so
Mhm.
much. And then came back here after, and then the nice thing as well for Kay is that her competition weight in para is the same as our senior women's weight, like 4 kilogram shot.
Okay.
So like any meet that we have, a twilight meet or anything like that, is very easy for her to go to. I mean, it's the same
Mhm.
thing for any ambulatory thrower, I would argue, because you can bring
Mhm.
your own implements and be fine.
Mhm.
But then you can kind of look at it that way as well. So just the more often Katie competes, the better. It was funny that because when I was making the year in review for her, in September last year, Paris was her 20th competition
Mhm.
ever. Well, like besides her like office stuff for school, right?
Oh, I thought you were gonna say that year.
What it was that year,
Ever.
but I was like ever too, because it was
Okay.
like so like looking at that is like kind of interesting in that sort of realm as well. And like because she's
Mhm.
so like relatively new to it, stuff like that, like looking like yes, I can collect all that data that we did all
Mhm.
last year, stuff like that, but there's such a learning curve to everything as well. And like now we're in another learning curve this year
Mhm.
because we're switching
Mhm.
to rotation and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So there's
Ah.
kind of like a lot to learn that way. But yeah, just like the more competitions I find the better. Like throw
Mhm.
people in the deep end and just like see what happens.
Mhm.
Maybe I shouldn't say that out loud, actually.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned sort of the year review and stuff. So what were your Katie first and maybe Jody after? What were your takeaways from Paris? Like after that, just sort of, I mean, generally and athletically.
So coming out of Paris, something I really realized that I needed to work on was kind of controlling my nerves because I do think
Mm.
I let my nerves get the best of me and really trying to slow down when I'm in the circle. We get a minute to throw, um, but when you're standing in that circle, the time feels a lot faster than it probably actually is going.
Mm.
So really focusing on taking that moment to breathe, and then just go out and do what you got to do. And then there was something else that was there and then it kind of went away. Um, I guess also, so leading into Paris, I had a post throw routine that I would do in
Mm.
between my throws, but that
Mm.
was really only when I needed something to help ground me. And during the games, I kind of did that every single throw, and that just became way too much. So
Hmm.
it's really focusing on maybe dialing that back or using it when I really do need to be grounded, so that I'm not everywhere and my adrenaline is out of
Hmm.
control.
Hmm.
So for sport wise, that's definitely something I would take with me. And
Hmm.
then I guess general wise, it would just be to really trust the process in whatever you do, uh,
Hmm.
because everything is just a stepping stone to something else. So
Hmm. Cool. So Jody, what about you? What were your takeaways from this Paralympic experience?
Um, oh man, I never been asked this before. Like what were my learnings from it? I always talk, but I guess like it's just the whole kind of process of it all and like seeing what that kind of high performance, like very high performance meets are like even just like the communication between the AC staff and stuff like that. Cause like I obviously went as a personal coach, which is a really good
Hmm.
experience. So be
Hmm.
able to see that, but not be in it and be like,
Hmm.
okay, so like this, like using the WhatsApp group chats, using the communities and stuff like that, like seeing that
Hmm.
sort of stuff there. And also like being around other coaches, always like you can always learn something new from everyone,
Hmm.
kind of thing like that. And being in that
Hmm.
environment, like the training camp beforehand, and everything, and just like showing that like like creating those high performance environments is very beneficial. Like
Hmm.
for the training camp beforehand, and stuff like that. So like trying to take learnings from that back to the group here, where if like so that also not only for the team, the university, but also for Katie, how can we create those high performance environments in Halifax, kind of thing like
Hmm.
that as well. So I think that was like a big learning there. Definitely like I I didn't have to really do that though. It's like make sure I know the rule book, but I'd like have to do like that was one thing that was like usually like at our little mini meets in Halifax, like I don't like I know all the officials.
Yeah.
So like make sure like I know but like the team staff was there too, but like
Hmm.
make sure that I know like pretty much know like what rule 32.14 is, 32.17, like having those memorized that if they came up, I could just like
Yeah.
quote them kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Like that sort of stuff as well. But like Brett was there, so that's his job, not mine.
Yeah.
But like knowing that sort of stuff there too, is important because like you never know in those big meets if something happens, you have to know exactly what to do. Like I don't have time to scroll my phone and find the rule number. I mean, I would.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So it sounds like just sort of everything is just a little bit faster, a little bit, like higher pressure. Um, so Katie, looking back on this year and a bit, what do you think were some of the key factors that allowed you to get to where you did? Because I think not everyone would have gotten through it, maybe. So what do you think allowed you to?
Um, I think what allowed me to get through this last year, was definitely a lot of my support from my coach to my family to a lot of AC as well. And then I think part of it too was just remembering my why through sport, where it's
Mm.
always been like the main reason I play sport is not just because I love it, but because it's breaking down barriers, whether it's for proving that women are equally valuable and should be equally seen as men in sport. And even the idea of like being an individual with a disability, that people with disabilities can do the same thing as people without disabilities. So I think having an amazing support system and remembering my why really helped drive me through everything that happened this last year.
Mm. That's awesome. Um, Jody, how has this experience shaped you as a coach? Like what is there things that you've, as a coach that you have learned and going to kind of change you differently?
Oh, 100%. There's been a
Mhm.
lot because I just have so many more people at my disposal now, John.
Mm.
So that's
Mhm.
a like reality of like at this kind of stuff is like I can ask AC strength conditioning staff any question that I want or anything like that
Mhm.
and kind of go through stuff with them if
Mhm.
I need to. So I think that's like I've learned a lot just from the technical standpoint,
Mhm.
and like the practical standpoint, I guess, there from the stuff outside of the circle. But then also just like it's pushed me to be a better coach and like reach out if I need to and be a little bit more collaborative with my athletes. I would say that also too,
Mm-hmm.
with regards to the para aspect in general. I mean, I've
Mm-hmm.
tried to be collaborative with my athletes no matter what, but there's like this, the athletes know themselves best no matter what, and especially
Mm-hmm.
an athlete with a disability. I mean, I'm not a person with
Mm-hmm.
disability, so I can't say that for sure, but I've
Mm-hmm.
seen because like they know their body best, they know what's going to work, what's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's like not like I don't say not so much for Katie, but especially for some of my like other para athletes, I've learned a lot from Katie about like asking questions, and we talk about advocacy a lot and kind of that sort of aspect there too. So that's really like helped. Oh, I don't want me. I was gonna say both of us. I don't speak for you.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like that sort of understanding there too is just like working with the athletes. I'm like very much, as much as I joke about it, like I don't believe that coaching should be a dictatorship. I think it should be like a we should work together. That's how we're gonna get the best out of our athletes. And like when Katie wants to try out the spin, we're gonna try out the spin and stuff like that. Like why not? Kind of thing. It's like she's short. Why not? I'm joking.
Wow, attacking me on here now. I thought this was a safe space.
But like she's athletic. She has like the aspects of rotational thrower. So why not do stuff like that and like work on that collaboration there as well. So I think that's kind of the biggest thing is that I don't need to be an island by myself. Is that even regardless of kind of that there are like people out there that are willing to help, and that doesn't just have to be in high performance, but obviously like from my coaches or like my athletes when I was an athlete myself. So like I work quite closely with like Sierra and Alberta and stuff like that. And just like having like there's a support system around the coach as well that can really help there too and make sure that I reach out to those people and stuff like that. So I guess that would be that was kind of a rambling, but we're used to that. So
That's all right. We love rambling on this
yeah.
on the AC webinar. We love it.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Yeah, I think that the collaborative element of coaching, like I sincerely hope that a lot of coaches sort of hear that and understand how valuable it can be, because yeah, I think that's just, when we talk about like old school coaching, this idea that like the coach is the one, usually man, and so there's another barrier we're working down, but like it's the one person that is in charge of everything, and I think that's not good for the coach either, because then the coach, there's a lot of pressure on the coach, and the coach has to kind of feels like it's all on his or her shoulders, but there's so many resources out there for the coaches. And so, if the coach is well supported, then that's going to help the athlete, because the athlete's going to get the best out of the coach and the other coaches and other people that are around. So just want to highlight that, because that's a big message we want to send, from the coaching department is
100%.
collaborate, work together, and like you said, like learn, like always be open to learning and growing.
And like, and on that note too, like you can learn, like I think it was all the time, like think about like bosses and stuff like that. You can learn from really good bosses, really good coaches, but you could also learn from maybe like not so good coaches. Not that we don't have any AC by any means, but like you can learn from that sort of aspect there as well, that there's always an opportunity to learn. It's like my big thing, like in Barcelona, like I was talking to like all the coaches there and be like, what do you do? Like, what's this kind of stuff like that? Like, why not talk about those things? And not just from like a technical standpoint, but from like a leadership standpoint, stuff like that as well. Like, there's like, why I'm also a chatter. We all know this. I'll chat with anyone. So it's good that way
It's
too.
good. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. So, um, Katie, what advice would you give to other athletes who are aspiring to make the Paralympics, and especially like, maybe people look at that as being like a very, very high mountain to climb. What would you say to aspiring Paralympians out there?
Um, I think I would say, like, don't feel afraid to reach out. Because that's definitely something that um, I've definitely learned more about, kind of how Jodi was talking about, how there's so much support everywhere.
Mhm.
And that at the end of the day, when you're trying to get to the big goal of being a Paralympian, you're not alone. You're
Mhm.
there's not 1 second when you're alone, because again, you're talking to your APA, you're getting emails from like a bunch of different support staff and your team ultimately,
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, they want to help you get to where you need to be. Um, and yeah, so don't be afraid to reach out. Always learn, feel like always ask questions. But I mean, I think the biggest thing is just really stand firm on why you're doing it, because sometimes when things do become a lot or you're having your tougher training days, just really solidifying in your why and trusting that process, because Rome wasn't built in a day. A Paralympian was not built in a day. You're going to have your ups and your downs. So really just trusting that process and really like lean on your support where it is.
Yeah, that's great. It's a great answer. I was at an event last week, and Mel Davidson, do you know who that is? She's the women's hockey coach. And she was talking, and she was saying how she said the same thing. You're not alone, and she kind of said it in two ways. Like kind of the positive way that you said of like, there's a lot of people going through what you're going through, and there's a lot of people to support it. But also this kind of like, I think sometimes people get down because they're like, oh, like this is just me, and like it's like I have to deal with all this stuff. But like everybody's dealing with stuff. Everyone's dealing with something. So I think that's a good message to reach out. Like I think if people are um like discouraged or challenged, or like I don't know what's the next step? How do I, like reach out, because there's a lot of people in the sport that have been there. And I think this is something I've learned too, just in through these webinars and the mentorship program. Like, maybe not everyone's as chatty as Jodi, but everyone loves to chat and share. I like everybody is so open and welcoming. So I think I guess not everyone, but most people really are. Um, so I think that's great. So I guess last question, maybe we'll take it back to the sport. So you've mentioned a couple of times the rotation. So what needs to happen, to get that in place, and like just from a sporting point of view, like how many centimeters do you gain from changing that? Like what's the advantage there?
Yeah, Jodi.
Questions on. So like, but my big thing with rotation is that like it makes sense biomechanically to rotate. If we're looking at all our like if we look at history of throwing, we glided for a long time, then the men started switching to rotation, and now we're seeing the women start to rotation, and just like looking at like I can't look at the record books because we all know that those aren't great for women's shot put.
Yeah.
But like look at like the training techniques of like Sarah and Chase and all these girls in the open category, that it makes like it biomechanically makes sense. You can get so much more speed, so much more like put behind the shot. So like that's the big thing there as well. Katie is very naturally athletic. So that really helps as well, because she's done like open sports and football and everything there her whole life. So that helps there too. You just get more force, more sort of aspect behind the shot there. So yeah, and it's just like you can usually tell in the first kind of like month or so if somebody's like rotationally inclined a lot or not. And Katie was fine with it once we got throwing the once we got actually throwing the shot.
Katie might have a comment to make there.
Yeah. Spends a lot of time with the med ball to start to like hit positions and stuff like that. But like it makes sense. It will be tough because like if you look at the F46 men's side, everyone rotates besides Greg. But on the women's side, everyone glides. So Katie will be the first one that we'll see at least. There's one person that rotated, wasn't there?
Yeah. She switched up really weirdly though.
Yeah. So like I don't know if I really call it a rotation. But so she'll be like one of the first ones in her class to be rotating. So that's also like that's bringing in the mental performance coach to help with that and that kind of anxiety around that as well. So that's like nice thing about working in a team there as well. So yeah, that's the big reasoning. I guess I didn't really give a reasoning there, but it makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. I wasn't sure if it was that or if it's just Richard was just being like, you got to do rotation.
I mean, yes, he also everyone loves rotating. Who wouldn't want to rotate? The unfortunate thing is that Katie won't be able to use those force plates in those new force plates at Toronto, because they're right-handed force plates, not left-handed force plates.
Oh, well, you gotta get me force plates, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So it's been so good. I think, so many good things that you've both said. I think really great to get your message out, let people know who you are. Are there any more questions from the audience? Just kind of last chance before we end here to pop a question in the chat. As you can tell, some of the questions were not on the sheet because they were added after as things were going. So people, kind of get into the conversation and have a question, but I don't see any more. So I'll just thank you there. really appreciate you coming on, and good luck with the indoor season, and then onwards to outdoors, and hopefully lots of good spins.
Lots of good rotations. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
You.